Welcome, everyone. This is Pilot Niels, and you're listening to LOTRO Players News, where we take a look at lasers and LOTRO and here at LOTRO Players. And this week we have with us Krister.
Hello.
And Cinders.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. And finally, we have some news this week. And let's begin with a little update. And when I say little, I mean little. Because there are only 3 little things to note that's happened on this. The first of them is that the 9th Legendary Items Rewards track is all nice and set up now, and it'll begin at 10 a.m. on Wednesday, February 14th. Actually, technically, it'll start when they reboot the system after the weekly maintenance on there. But when the system comes back on Wednesday, we will have the next round to the rewards track. So please try to claim any rewards that you have left coming to you before that time.
Who are you trying to speak to when you say that? I feel like it's directed at somebody particular.
Well, it's directed at the audience in general, so they don't forget.
I better get on the reward track.
So you just happened to conveniently also hear the reminder, Krister.
I mean, you just want to make sure on that. And also, they also finally turned off the Yuletide Hobbit gifts for this season. So they will be away for the next 10 months. Then I guess we'll be seeing them again when Yule pops up next year again. So I hope you aren't sad about losing the extra furniture or whatever that comes with the Yuletide presents during that time.
Are they starting to distribute like Valentine's now? Oh, Mathom armor with Valentine, like a Valentine themed Mathom armor. That would be worse. That would actually be worse than regular Mathom armor.
Well,
but if it was Shire Plum.
No.
So nice.
See, it was already bad enough, but thanks a lot, Cinders.
Right. And also the third item, which is not technically in the release notes, but is a little store item, and that is that the River Hobbit is now available for standalone purchase in the LOTRO store. So if you weren't buying a River Hobbit because you didn't want any of the bundles associated with it, now you can buy it just for points. And that's it for 38.3, though there's a rumor that there will be next week a 38.3.1 because apparently there are 1 or 2 things, I think, with the reward track or something like that that have not been officially seen by anyone yet, where they noticed a couple of quirks, so they want to fix those up before the reward season starts. So there will be a very, very small update next week, and they say it might be so small and that it might affect things not seen yet, that it might not have any release notes. We'll find out next week. So then let's go to the bigger item, and that is the first bowler for update 39. Now, did either of you have a chance to play anything on bowler yet?
No, I have not, so I'm very curious to hear what you have to say.
Right then.
I don't have it downloaded on my computer anymore. It was taking up too much space.
Yeah, I can understand. That is a little bit of a problem on there, is all the space taken up. Yet they already keep one LOTRO client up there. Having a second one on there could be a little tricky on there. So, please note, Corsairs of Umbar content is available to any account that has purchased the expansion bundle. So if you purchase the expansion bundle, then anything of that nature was available to the people who were on Bowler on there. So first off, we had Corsairs of Umbar Arenas of Conflict Instant Cluster. So they were testing out actually 3 of the 4 instances. Those were the Isle of Storms, one of the 3-player instances. And they had tiers 1, 2, and 3 were being tested on there. They had, during the second round, because they had the original beta, and then midweek they brought it down and had a some updates to it. And there they added the Hall Leads, the Arena, and that's the 6-player instance, and that was open up for tiers 1, 2, and 3. And then the third one was the raid for the depths of Mahda Corbo, which right.
Sorry.
And so this was the 12-player raid, and this was open up. Tiers 1, 2, and 3 were being tested there for the first 2 bosses only. So I think that's usually typical, where you have the first 2 bosses being tested before anything else.
Maybe that's why the third boss is always the toughest.
Why the third boss is always the toughest? Okay. Well, maybe. Now, one of the things that they noted concerning the raid, is that they are changing some of the ways in which they are doing raids. And that what they're doing is that Tier 1 is not going to be on the same level as the old Tier 1s. Tier 1 is going to be story mode. And that means this is the version of the raid that will have any lore information that there will be. For example, you know how there are sometimes in raids where you do have these long speeches and the like, and they have all this lore revealed all the way through. And after doing the raid 5 times, you say, could you just get on with it? What they decided to do was that Tier 1 is going to be the only tier that's going to have all that story material, so that you'll be able to see the story and all that stuff and interact the story, what you normally will very often do. But the higher tiers won't have that. They'll just the speeches, I guess, have the shortened version of the speeches by the bosses and stuff like that. So therefore, Tier 1 is going to be a story mode. It's going to be a lot easier than the current Tier 1s were, and that if you want the corresponding lore with the raid, this is the version to play. It is far easier to complete and has far fewer mechanics. So you'll see the bosses and you get the story. This is probably the version of the raid that I've been wishing that they would have for a long time, because I mean, my main reason, for example, for doing the raid from Karn Doom was so that I could finally see the end of the story. So if that's what you're looking for in the raid, then that's what Tier 1 is all about. Now, Tier 2 is the one to introduce the advanced mechanics. So it's a tougher experience. It's not quite up to the old raid level, but this is the one where you have an opportunity to practice the mechanics to it. And in fact, when they first released the raid, they're planning on releasing the raid with update 39, but only for the first 2 tiers, so that you can get the story and so that you could practice for Tier 3 for when that comes up. All those awards that they used to give for leading the charge into a raid and all that stuff, that's going to start at Tier 3, because that's when the real challenge of it. So therefore, Tier 3 is the traditional normal difficulty. And then Tiers 4 and 5, when introduced, are further difficulty stages with new mechanics and challenges and all that stuff that you usually get it. So Tiers 3, 4, and 5 are going to be the ones that the raiders will be wanting to do. Tier 1 is the one that I would be wanting to do. And Tier 2 is sort of practice mode to get ready for Tier 3. Got it, Krister?
Oh, yeah. It sounds... I guess I just need to see it in play, I guess.
Yeah, we have to see that in play. But I suspect that when it comes out, maybe I'm hoping that Ploy will do at least one of these Tier 1 raids so that I can have a chance to do it. Tier 2, then the more serious members of your group could start preparing.
I guess the curiosity, too, around it is it truly going to be that Tier 1 and Tier 2 don't really unlock or do anything? I would imagine that. I'm hoping that there would at least be things that were, goals within each of those tiers that you could reach.
What do you mean by goals?
Well, what I mean by that is that there's certain things that unlock depending on what difficulty you've completed, and typically that would have been satisfied in the tier 1 run. If we completed tier 1, we typically can unlock things. Is that going to be eliminated entirely in tier 1?
Well, it depends what you mean by unlock. Are you talking about unlocking powerful rewards, or are you talking about unlocking story?
Yeah, unlocking powerful reward. I guess either or. I guess because I would assume storyline stuff would always be, you can just do the story level.
Yeah. The story level is anything involves story or anything like that, and completing quests, stuff like that. That stuff's going to be tier 1. I think that based on what they've been saying, because I've been hearing them saying for the last few months that they're not going to have the full rewards for the delvings until tier 3, until the tier 3 of the raid is released. As a result of that, I think that that's what's going to be associated with the good raid rewards, is because tier 3 is this tier 3, and the delvings are going to be considered to be equivalent levels. It sounds like.
Yeah, so I guess the main thing is just we're going to have to just put our toes in the water and see what that means.
Yeah.
Is tier 3 the equivalent of a T2 today, or is it a weaker T2, or is it a stronger T2? Or...
I'm not too sure. I guess you're going to have to find out, and because I think that tier 3 is going to be the equivalent of the old tier 1.
So that's kind of what I was curious about too. And so then, of course, the curiosity is, what is the T2, the new T2? Is it going to be a preparation for T3?
Yeah.
Or is it going to be
it's essentially because in the past, people would prepare for a raid by running the 6-player instance. Okay. Right? Because that's how people, that's usually because the 6-player instance would come out before the raid by several weeks. So you would run several 6-player runs in order to get ready.
Well, of course, now keep in mind that people may have done that, kindly, but we're talking about ploy. Ploy's often like, okay, there's a new area. Okay, do we know anything about this place? No. Do we know who lives there? No. What are we going to do there? I don't know. We just get there and burn things, and if there's a cave, we go into it and steal everything in it. Okay,
right.
Let's go.
Yes, and this will be perfect for your group, because you run tier 1, you see the place, you can tour around it. Then you run tier 2, and this will be your first looking into a dungeon, and it'll be about ploy level at that point. And then you learn how to, and then you get it to competent ploy level after a few runs, and then when tier 3 comes out, you might be ready for it.
Yeah, tier 3 just sounds like it could be the humiliation tier for us. It's just like,
okay,
hey guys, we're rocking everything in tier 1. We'll stand no problem whatsoever here.
Rocking in tier 1 is not going to get you ready for tier 3. You have to rock tier 2 to get ready for tier 3.
But yeah, I mean, it sounds. I feel like they're doing an appropriate change in terms of. I know a lot of frustration can be around the accessibility of things if they're barred by these raids or instances that are just extremely tough. And
it's not just that they're tough, because I get it. They're raids and stuff. It's that there are storylines tied to these raids that you have people who aren't interested in raiding.
Right.
Can't
so
do
they
them.
Can come through, because it's still good things for them to see too. I mean, the content. That's what I've always loved about LOTRO. Is that you always feel that it has the depth of content that can't be matched. Frankly.
Yeah. Right. I would have loved to. If there were a version of the Anvil where I could have seen the actual story and all that unfold instead of getting this summary by the dwarves a couple of updates later.
Honestly, you put a little thought into it too, probably. It would be so exciting if they could go back then and apply this template to everything, take everything they've made, get it synced so it can go up to whatever the max level is, and then apply this new filter to it. I wonder if you could bring back a ton of players maybe doing that too. Where suddenly content is accessible that wasn't. But maybe I know I'm dreaming.
Yeah, I know. You're.
No.
In fact, if we would do Anvil, I probably could do it on my 150 character. And
so that's actually a really interesting point, Krister, because I was just reading the forum, like the thread for feedback on the raids, and the 6-man and the 3-man, and that actually was one of the questions that was asked. And I don't know if it's feedback that they'll take into account, but you're not the only person who's thinking that might be nice to have some of the older raids be reconfigured to be like the newer ones.
Oh heck yeah! And then
it's
like
getting
with Dragok,
time and resources.
Yeah, with Dragok, then the main fun in the T1 is just trying to get down to the first platform, and that's just the fun of T1. Dragok's just burning people right and left. You finally, hour into the raid, you finally all get down there. No, but I've thought about that because there's a lot of people that have been lost through attrition or changes, and to think about bringing all that content back into relevance would be so cool if they could do that, because there's a ton of stuff out there that I know people would love to do again, but it doesn't feel accessible anymore, basically.
Yeah, because there are all those instances in Pelennor, which I still feel they're tough even today.
Yeah, it's fascinating seeing some of how challenging some of them were and could potentially be again if the kinks were worked out and them coming up to the current level.
Well, we'll have to see.
Terrifying ones too. I mean, like Fires of Smog. I don't know if I'd ever want to just run that game, period. But that was another one that was a one that was fun, just in terms of you had to be coordinated and you had to plan it and you had to execute it correctly, or you were going to have trouble. And so that's part of the fun, I think.
All right. Anyway, I did run the solo version of the Isle of Storms and of the Arena. The Isle of Storms was a bit overtuned on the solo version. They said that they are going to tame that down a little bit for the next build, which is good because I had 3 characters. I tried through it. My Lore Master managed to get through it all, and my Warden and my Mariner were crock food. So I couldn't even get past the first boss. So that was completely a pain in there. But I said that they are going to tone down the solo version a little bit because the melee, I'd say melee mediums, I think, had a great deal of trouble with that particular, or at least my characters did. Though I did hear a couple of other people who also complained on the matter. I heard, though, that someone who was playing a champion just ripped through the thing. So the heavies might not have had too much trouble with it. And anyway, so I did try the Isle of Storms on there. It looks like an interesting little one in there, though, as I said, they could tune that down a little bit, in my opinion. And the Arena, I think it was still a little bugged because I was about halfway through it and then it seemed to get to an infinite loop where it was keep on spawning new mobs, and I think it went on just well, actually, no, not a little bit too long, a lot too long on there. So I'm going to assume that just got bugged out because it was the first draft of it. So we'll see on that next time. And I did not try the raid at all in any way, so we'll see how that comes along. So that's the first thing of note on there. They also had some updates on the classes. They say they had all non-immediate combat skills should now have the fast skill tag. I'm still not exactly sure what the fast skill tag is exactly.
Fast skill tag.
Yeah. I haven't figured out what's the differences between a fast skill and a non-fast skill. I mean, immediate, okay, that's pretty obvious, but the fast skills, still haven't quite figured out exactly what that means.
Right, so it'd be like immediate, fast. You think immediate would be faster than fast, right?
I would think so.
Yeah, I think, and then maybe instantaneously is faster than immediate. And
anyway, but
sorry.
Let's go through the proposed changes here. For the captain, power costs of some basic skills have been reduced slightly.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure, because I think you kept on running out of power when we were doing some stuff.
You know what? Maybe you were running out of power.
That happened one time in Guathrenost.
Okay.
Maybe the mariner ran out of the power and the captain was just fine. Do you ever think about that? Huh?
A whole bunch of people.
No, I don't recall.
Ran out of power.
Well, now last night did you guys notice there was no power complaints? I was running Blue Line last night, so I was running my healing mode where I'm pumping out a bunch of power as well. So I was curious if that was actually making a difference or not, but I'm not sure if it did. I don't think we had any power problems last night, though. But that might have just been.
I don't think so.
But the last 2 times that we ran Guathrenost, we had 2 lore masters with us who were able to resupply power as people were running low, and there were no power complaints those 2 times.
Well, and Finn, our kin lore master, he was a power slinging lore master in the old days, so he knew he knows what to do. And of course, he lost his job when power was no longer a factor at all, and we all had infinite power.
Yeah. And the other one is Herald healing skills Lend Courage and Lend Resolve were erroneously requiring and consuming far too much of the Herald's own morale. These skills now have a much more appropriate morale cost.
Great.
All right.
I think there's a lot of improvements to the Herald recently, too, which has been awesome.
All right. For the champion, power costs of many basic skills have been reduced slightly. Okay. Actually, there are a lot of classes that have that little thing in there. Also, Wild Attack now correctly benefits from bonuses to strike skill critical magnitudes, such as from the trait Deadly Strikes. Rend no longer reduces enemy mitigations. Blade Wall now reduces enemy physical mitigation by 5%. Blade Wall damage is increased by 10%, and Rend Bleeds damage increased by 10%. And for Guardians, same power thing in there. Specializing in the Keen Blade no longer suggests that you gain a passive bonus to response chain skills. The trait Numbed Senses now increases the cooldown of Ignore the Pain by 2 seconds for each tier. This is to balance the value gained from the additional effect removals and should improve Cleanse parity with other tanks specs in particular. All right. So Numbed Senses, if you take that trait, it will increase your cooldown for Ignore the Pain. What do you think about that, Em?
I don't know that it would really make that big of a difference, just because Ignore the Pain is already your longest cooldown. So it's not one that I use very often.
Okay.
And I want to say that's the great big health pop, but I could be wrong. I'd have to look at it again.
Yeah, I presume that I think it's the thing that removes conditions that are on you.
That one, 2 seconds isn't going to make a big difference.
Oh, okay. And Redirect now reflects and reduces less damage when used in the Etmors. This also affects the potency gained from the trait Vicious Rebuttal. For the Hunter, Explosive Arrow now applies Major Rend Armor. For the Lore Master brooches and stick pins that give pet in-combat morale regen, pet critical ratings, and pet evade ratings have had these properties removed as they were not working properly. Benediction of the Raven now removes 3% tactical mitigation rather than 10% fire mitigation, so it's now more generalized but less potent. And considering that I don't dish out much fire on my lore master, I think that'll probably actually be an improvement from me, but someone who specializes in fire might not like that change. Catmint now increases the potency of your Raven's Distraction debuff by 10% and does not impact the Benediction debuff. Sticky Tar now reduces physical mitigations by 8% in addition to its existing 10% tactical mitigation reduction. And Major Rent Armor now reduces enemy mitigations by 12.5% after the more potent 15% enfeeble debuff expires. For the Mariner, power cost adjustments. Flick now is an immediate skill, and Pitch Pot now reduces physical mitigation by 8% in addition to existing 10% tactical mitigation reduction. For the Runekeepers, healing from Writ of Health is reduced by 5%. For the Warden, seems like they're doing the power cost thing for all of the melee classes, because same thing on the power reduction. And Assailment and In the Fray stance skill cooldowns have been reduced but to 1 second. And, actually, thank goodness, because whenever I accidentally go into Assailment, I had to wait, feels like forever, where I had to wait before going back into In the Fray after accidentally going into Assailment. So, yes, thank you! And marked and diminished target baseline debuff potency has been reduced from 5% to 3%. As for combat and monsters, fixed an issue in the Protecting the Sea Lanes Umbar mission, wherein portals were usable in combat. Mounted combat, minstrels and lore masters will no longer shout twice when using the Intimidate skill. Howling Grey Wolves and Veilfly pests near Kellendim have been adjusted to spawn at level 6. I think they were saying that they were spawning at somewhere, I think they had a range of 6 to 8 before, something like that. And if you are a level 1 person spawning in to that area, because it's a starter zone, I thought, okay, maybe being higher than 6 was a little bit too much for a newbie quest. And several named worms in Forgel that were identified as warm worms were corrected to be labeled as cold worms. Now, I have to admit that all these years, I had assumed that the reason why they were called warm worms was because they tended to hang out at all those hot springs that are in Forgel. So I had thought that was intentional because they like to stay near the hot springs. I didn't realize, that they were incorrectly labeled that all these years.
Hey, wait a second. These worms are warm.
And the lion and saber-tooth monster's effects Festering Wound has been given more obvious visual effects to indicate that this effect should be cleansed. As for crafting,
I wonder what the effect will be. Is it going to be the gigantic fountain of blood?
Well, seeing how I ran into plenty of lions in that arena instance when I was trying that out, no, it wasn't anything like a fountain of blood. Crafting. Several crafted medium and light helms and gloves have had their names changed to better reflect their appearance. Weaponsmith polishes have been removed to the Luckstone category in the crafting panel. Umbar crafted burglar signals now properly make use of the critical crafting item for tailors. Fervent morale potions crafted by Umbar Guild scholars have been reworked, thank goodness, because the old ones were junk, and they will now increase the healing received by players for a set time. Afterwards, they will be affected by a debuff that prevents the healing increase buff until it runs out. All right. I mean, they're worse now.
Yeah, they didn't say improved, did they?
Okay, yeah. I suppose that I guess some people who just must have most people must have some way of effectively using those things, because when I read them, I say, why does these things exist? All right, quest deeds and adventure areas. Fix the graphical glitch that occurred when Legolas dismounts from the horse during the instance Allies Unexpected. Fix an issue in the Cape of Umbar quest, A Pallet Tide, wherein billboard counter announcements were not appearing for all objectives. That was just reminding me of last night when we were doing Helagrod in the, I think it was the Spider Wing, or was it in the Drake Wing, where we had those counter. I think it's Drake Wing where we were supposed to.
Oh yeah, where the counter was still counting when we were.
Yes, we were halfway through the next instance before it finally finished counting all those Drakelings that we killed. Yeah, I think they need to fix the billboard counter so that it doesn't count slowly every single one when you've got about 90 of the same type thing going through there all at once. Olenor should never have been attackable during Blood of My Blood, either when visible or invisible. Now she's not. There have also been numerous fixes to the drama sequence. Adjusted the placement of crates in the stacking game in Farouk Sahar to eliminate some graphical issues. Mithril travel to Farion in Agarnite, the return to Saragost should now send you to its correct location. Adjusted the phasing of Ayaluk, the return Ayaluk in Rakatab if you help someone with part of his quest line without having started yourself. Worm and Corsair Slayer deeds for the Cape of Umbar will now count more of the enemies in this area. And I don't know, did they update that recently already? Or are they saying even more? The quest bestowed items for Reflections of War, Call to the North, and Angmar Reborn Prologue are now destructible, which brings them in line with similar items. The Kundalar Reflection of War and Call of the North. Actually, yeah, I think those were things that were annoyingly in my quest log that I couldn't get rid of. The Kundalar boss you encounter during Instance Mists of Anduin will no longer fight with an invisible sword. Arid Mithrin repeatable quests can now be reset with Mithril, as can West Gondor repeatable quests, Lothorian repeatable quests, and Gunabad repeatable quests. The Lothorian repeatable quest, A Rebel Too Far, can now be reset with Mithril, and West Gondor fishing repeatable quests now can be resettable with it. And daily and weekly mission quests in Gunabad have been made Mithril resettable and to aid in allegiance progression. Mithril travel to Faron in Argonite, the return to Saragost, should now send you to the correct location. Adjusted placement of... Actually, did it? I got these things twice. All right. They're doing that just to test me, right?
Yeah, I feel like we've heard all this before. No.
Yes. The Pelargir King's Condor quest, A Cure for Weariness, now rewards players with level-appropriate lamb hotspots. The drama sequence at the end of the mission, the Joruka Clan Chapter 8 has been received some polish. Arwen will no longer disappear from Imberlin above Rivendell when she departs for the wedding. Players working on the court of Lothorian allegiance will still need to speak with her at Imlad Galer, but now she will be more reliably present in the early game. This is the problem where someone was attempting to do the level 50 prologue the interlude quests that they have at Rivendell. Someone was trying to do one of those quests in there. The one I think where Frodo, I think it had to do with Frodo in there. And unfortunately, they couldn't do it because this was a character that had gone back to there after triggering where Arwen moves out towards the wedding. And so Arwen was no longer at that location. And so now their quest was incompletable. So what they decided to do was, all right, so Arwen is going to stay there and somehow be in two places at once after she leaves for Gondor. The bestowal text and objectives in the quest of the War Efforts Need You have been updated for accuracy and clarity. Made some adjustments to the would-be shantyman to make Aniamat's quest objectives more clear. Corsairs in Azathoth's Rue and the rest of Tarling's Crown will now count for the deed Corsair Slayer of Western King's Gondor and Corsair Slayer of Western King's Gondor Advanced. Goats and deer in King's Gondor West Belfalis were incorrectly classified as belonging to the Blackroot Vale. Right, and adjusted the directions of the crossing of the Uri in Epic Volume 4, Chapter 3, Book 3, Chapter 3, Fearless. I was just thinking, should they also fix the insects in the Cape of Umbar that were being treated as being from
You would think so.
Yes.
We might be the only people who did that, though, and realized.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I mean, the other people were already finished with the deed.
Either already finished with the deed or just not out wandering around north of Umbar.
Yeah, I guess that's possible. 2 previously remotely bestowed quests in Harwick, East Rohan, Pushing Back Their Advance, and Quench the Flames are now bestowed by Sergeant Hybert. Both require the quest Prisoners of Ogachosh to be in progress before he will offer them to you. And also, Hobbit and Elf Allegiance instance quests have been previously appeared in the quest log under Allegiance to Kingdom of Gondor will now appear in their correct categories. Alright, and for missions and delvings, Elder Slade missions have been converted into delvings. I did not attempt to do this, so I didn't do that, but they said added travel skills to the Bloody Eagle Tavern in Umbar to delving quartermasters for delving writs. These skills can be used from level 20 onward. The travel skills available at the delving quartermasters in Anakharfu and the Elder Slade have had their items levels lowered to 20 to allow lower level characters to venture onto missions there. And in mission aiding the bridge builders, the builders now have hammers in their hands that they also use as weapons. Elder Slade mission givers can now redeem completed delving quests and give delving weekly quests. Elder Slade missions have been changed from a 10-day schedule to a 7-day schedule. This change was made alongside the delving missions conversion so that each delving variant can appear with each mission. And that's because the delving variants are on a 6-day cycle, and so if they were both on even numbers, then you'll never have a case where you'll be able to get everything done. So what they've decided then is that they will switch it to a prime number 7 days. So I presume that then they squished in them so that there'll be more missions available each day. The portal at the beginning of the ill-fated cave, Umbar mission, no longer allows passage while on the mission, as it is only intended to use during the Dig Deep Cape of Umbar quest. Thank you very much, because when the first time I did the ill-fated cave, I accidentally stepped through that thing in there, and I was never able to get back in. So I had to go all the way back and retake the mission as a result of that. Yeah, that was frustrating. Gnawing cold and persistent cold attacks with 1 hour player debuffs have been removed from Elder Slate mission monsters. All right, thank you. The Throne of Therazahar Elder Slate mission now correctly lists Hrimel's Chosen as the mission twist. I mean, that's good. An adorable sandworm pet is now available from the Delving Quartermaster for Delving Writs. And Grabby the Crab pet is now available for the Delving Quartermaster for Delving Writs. On a Mission Weekly and on a Continuing Mission Weekly will no longer bestow twice on legendary worlds like Treebeard. Only the version awarding motes of enchantment will be available until the level cap matches that of the live worlds. And the Elder Slate mission, the Sacrificial Tower, now correctly lists reinforcements as a mission twist. A Delving Quartermaster has been added to the Anakrefu War Room. Delving mission givers no longer reference Karis or Sarkvorn, the Black Grave. Thank you, because that was always weird having them talk about that. The Malastee in the Elder Slate mission, Assault on Ashmar Zarach, now shows destruction visual effects when destroyed. The potency of Sauron's defenses reflexes have been greatly reduced. Added polish to the mission and life's work. I guess we'll have to go and run that to find out what the polish is supposed to be. I mean, after the update, of course. And the mission twist, Burning Shield, is now a corruption and is removable by corruption removal. This has a max stack size of 3. And Delving Malices have been reordered and switched to create new Delving Malice combinations. For items and rewards, the Allegiance Armour item, Elegantly Woven Shoes of the Eagle, have had their stats updated so they're no longer the same as Finely Stitched Shoes of the Eagle. Additional cloaks of LSR have been bartered from the King's Gondor Quartermaster NPCs. Some Ulst Dunlop and Wildermore shields once again display at their intended size. Umbari Feast will now apply over the current trait food and food buffs on the player. Personal use, 2-hour food, and feast now have the same priority, so you will receive the effects of whichever is the most recently eaten between the two. And I think we were talking about that last night during the raid. In that,
well,
that's it.
You say talking, and I say complain bitterly.
Well, I was
because you think about it,
not to use the full power of my words on that matter.
We have regular food we eat over the course of a day, and then on top of that, you would eat picnic food, right? So picnic food should always be additional to whatever you eat. It should be that extra. Maybe there's a consequence though. Is maybe for the next hour and a half after we've eaten it, after it's expired, then we can't do anything, and our stats are reduced by half or something.
Right.
No, but the change makes sense. Honestly, it's just funny because they started this new era of picnic table, the picnic table era in Middle Earth, which has just been absolutely funny. Anybody have a picnic table? That's the most common question to ask now.
Well, it still has better stats than the regular food in any case. So
yeah.
It's still going to probably be used quite often in raids and the like.
I delight in the thought of the Fellowship in the movies having to deal with the logistics of bringing a bunch of picnic tables with them too. How are we going to fit these in? We're bringing these into Moria? Are you kidding?
You think? I could just imagine. Bill the Pony, I'm sure, certainly was wasn't happy about those things.
I quit.
Yes. Yes. The map to Rosgobel will now be consumed on use. However, it's had its cooldown lowered to 10 minutes. And Delving Hope tokens now last 30 minutes and persist through death. Does not apply to the Fellowship. All right. PMP and more stuff. I'll save that for when we have the actual release. The landscape. Underground marigolds in the Gloomlands have been brought to the surface. Braglade's flower in the Old Forest has been moved from inside of a rock. A crate of supplies in Scarhald have been moved from inside of a wall. The roving threats quartermaster of Angmar and Forgel, Kanak and Alstazant, have traded appearances to be consistent with their locations. Tagwin's Bury in Trader's Wharf has gotten a new hairdo. Beriador in Dol Amroth the King's Gondor will now have a consistent appearance. Larry Grudd has put her book away in order to fix her hair. I'm not too sure what that's about, but okay.
I love this set of updates.
Ambassador Sparcourt now looks the same inside the instance a house forged anew as he does outside of it. Riengard's clothes in the Hernes mayor's office kitchen are now the clothes that she was wearing the last time you saw her. The roving threats quartermaster in Angmar and Forgel, Kanak and Osanat. Oh, that's a repeat. Okay. Lisbeth Honeymead in the Coleman Waddle Inn is no longer sinking into the floor. I think I had trouble noticing that because she's on the other side of the bar. And the defender of Oscaruth at the Eglain camp in the Lone Lands is now standing on the ground. Sithgar in Osriman has calmed down a bit and is no longer kicking things. Firgam in Oscaruth no longer kicks the table between conversations. Baldman of Stoke in West Rohan now has a consistent appearance. Miscellaneous stuck spots have been fixed. Miscellaneous asset placement issues have been fixed. The Longbeard stable masters have been renamed War Efforts Recruiter to reflect their role more accurately, and fixed a font problem with displaying instance names in the Outer Gondor reflecting pool. And miscellaneous emotes. River Hobbits now produce trumpet sounds when performing the /trumpet emote.
Oh, no.
What?
Well, I don't know if you've noticed this, Pine Leaf, but there's a tendency for hobbits to gather around me in raids and play trumpets. So now that I know that the River Hobbits have now been enabled with this terrible curse, I can expect even more trumpets around me.
They're trying to trumpet triumphantly for you.
The worst part was when they discovered the trumpet soundboard on Discord, too. So then I was having trumpets being played in LOTRO and Discord at the same time. It was terrifying.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
So this is not good news.
Okay. The Brachioborn's provisioner, Sancho Chubb in the Shire, has had that title added to his character. And disposing of bottles in the Midsummer's Festival quest, A Cure for All Ills, now has an animation. Removed the extra sound effect that was playing during the instance The Fellowship Departs. I have absolutely no idea what that was. All Bjorning traceries should now correctly have a chance of dropping from random tracery packages. Certain versions of the damage vulnerability properties have had their tooltip description mixed up. Melee versus range versus tactical. This has been fixed. Fixed a bug causing auras to sometimes not display on Axe of the Shadowed King. Neighborhood task boards have been adjusted. Level 140 tasks are now on their own posting. The placement of some of the postings has been adjusted so that the levels of the tasks with the task collection box below them. Okay, so that means level 140 tasks are finally in the neighborhoods then. The bloody tavern vendor Akalam's map note has been corrected. The neighborhood task board now has tasks for levels 141 through 150. I guess that answers that question. And players can no longer rotate while using the epic lecture emote, which was previously breaking the effect.
Hey, I just want to know which tasks you can do between 140 and 145. Because I couldn't find any.
Yes, there is that little thing. Maybe they fix that one.
That would be nice.
Though it's not in the release notes though. And I think that's it for the Bulwer build. There will probably be some tweaks to this in the next couple of weeks because I suspect that next week they are going to finally maybe bring out the one instance that has not yet been tested. That is the Streets of Rahalbach, and we'll see how that works. And that's it for release notes this week. So let's go into store sales. And Sans, would you like to read store sales, or would you rather have Krister do it?
Well, I don't think Sans is going to be able to answer that.
Oh, sorry.
Definitely not going to read it. But I am going to let Krister read it.
Okay.
All right. So the River Hobbit, of course, is now available outside of our bundled offers at the LOTRO for LOTRO points in the in-game store. Forge your own ring. You're going to get 20% off. Crafting Guild access, ingredient packs, crafting accelerators, rapid craft, crafting tiers, recipe books, and that's going to be through February 15th. And the weekly coupon is for a free 100% mark acquisition, 6 hours. And the coupon code is all one word, is more marks, MOREMARKS. And that is again through February 15th.
Whee!
Yeehaw!
So then, tomorrow is the championship game for American football, gridiron as some people might call that. And there is a question for the reminiscing about this week that is what in-game equivalent of a major sporting event do we have similar to that of something big like the Super Bowl or the Champions League final or the finale to the World Cup or anything like that. So can you think of any equivalents to that in-game?
Yep. The one thing that came right to mind was Weatherstock.
Weatherstock. So not exactly a sporting event, but that's more like a major concert, obviously.
It's the equivalent.
Yes, the equivalent, because
you have tons of people coming on. You have all-day events happening, a bunch of bands. So it's a big celebratory thing where you get a huge amount of the server population in at one time.
Right, and it sort of gets one of those things that keeps on growing.
Yep.
And Cinders, do you have any ideas on that?
Well, initially I had been thinking of things like raids or epic battles at level 10 or things like that. That are like time consuming but still entertaining. But I hadn't thought of Weatherstock, but I think that's a great one.
Okay.
Hobnanigans doesn't have like some championship event, does it?
No, but I think Hobnanigans is the closest to a sporting event that the game has.
Yeah.
Oh, that is definitely the closest thing we have to a sporting event.
Because the horse racing doesn't really count.
No. It was when they first tried to implement it, but
can you imagine?
They had to undo that. Yeah.
Having a Grand Prix for
I'd love to show up to that with my war steed.
Right? Yeah. That would be
See you guys later.
Actually, there is a kin that used to do horse races. I think they were running it back. It was back when all horses tended to have the same speed and all that stuff, and they were able to do a level playing field. It was fine, but then when they started having journeymen and all those things like that, it became tougher and tougher. I know when they did try to have it at first on there, the rule was essentially is that if you had journeyman rider, you better had smell the roses on, or you'd be instantly disqualified. So they had people checking there to make sure that no one had a journeyman trait on that wasn't being nullified by smell the roses or something like that, because they wanted to make sure that no one was getting an unfair advantage because of something they bought from the store. So that was I haven't heard too much about those things recently, so I have a feeling those events aren't being held anymore. But they used to have these big racing events by some kids.
Yeah, we had done that a couple times for like festival things where everybody was together. I remember we did that in the housing area where our kin house was, where we had this relay race where people on their goats, I think, running around, and that was pretty fun. But yeah, the regular stuff, I think it just all went away when the war steeds came out, basically. So
yeah, I know that they had a separate war steed category for a time, because it was obvious who had the regular steeds and who had the war steeds, so they created two separate classes for them in order to try to get around that. So that's one of the things I remember concerning maybe sporting events that were actually player run or anything of that nature. Then, of course, this came out right on the week where I was testing that arena 6-player instance, because I just imagine a 6-player version in here and what that's going to be like when you have 6-player characters going against whatever you're facing in the arena. So this is being set literally inside of an arena in the city of Umbar in there, so we have a chance to actually see what's in there.
Oh, I can't wait to be standing in the crowd watching the gladiatorial combat and hear Pine Leaf's voice rise up from the arena floor. What would you say? None shall pass? No.
I could just imagine that if they allowed players, if they did something similar to what they do for the Winter Festival, where you have the theater, where you could have where you can have people watching, where you could spectate on somebody else, where you could open up, let's just say that a spectator version, so that spectators can join and watch you and cheer you on, or more likely cheer you off as you're going along and trying to fight the monsters in there. That would be a rather interesting.
Cool. Yeah, that would be really cool, actually.
We'll have to see. I have a feeling the logistics of doing such a thing will be...
Oh, here we go. Hearing your voice going, are you not entertained?
All right. Let's head into our week in gaming. Krister, what were you up to?
Well, last night, of course, we did some different things, some unexpected things. You know, that's kind of a ploy thing. We advertised for one thing, and then bing, bang, boom, we're at a timeshare convention.
So the whole thing was a ploy.
Oh, caught on to us. See, now, Pine Leaf knows too much. No, but I thought last night was kind of funny because it reminded me of the old adage about an army moves on its stomach or fights on its stomach. And so people were grumbling last night. We had a couple people grumbling about the fact that we've been running these things and doing work, but we get no rewards because we're not at level cap with these stuff we ran. So to appease the potentially angry, rebellious soldiers, we went ahead and ran some stuff. And the funniest thing about last night for me too was we were so focused on Thorog, and we realized that a couple people that had come had not unlocked. So we went through we ran all the wings to unlock it, and then went into the dragon wing. It was so funny. I just loved that our expectation was, okay, finally, we did all this work, we got all this stuff, and let's see. Wait a sec. Okay, this doesn't drop seals. Okay, let's go do something that drops seals really quick. So ultimately, last night was a lot of fun. It was just so funny to kind of hear this grumbling of, well, we're going to do something and we're not going to get paid. It's like, I better stop this right now. We better get a couple coins in your guys' purse and everything's going to be fine. You know. The other thing that I'm loving, and like we just talked earlier, is the rise of the picnic tables and how important and thoughtful picnic tables are now. You know, you never, in no rate have I ever referenced of or thought of a picnic table in any fashion. And now everybody's like, does somebody have a picnic table? Before we go in there, let's, I think it's so funny. It's like, well, before we go to defeat the evil, hey, let's have a picnic. So I'm having fun with that. And I've been, of course, going absolutely insane with the Adobe's AI program and exploring the art there. It's been a lot of fun. Um, Also, been playing ESO. I like running around with my orc and doing the events. But now you said something tonight that just triggered something horrible in my mind. Finally, and you said the Shanty Man, and so of course I had to immediately think of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and so it's like, who can make a kinsai, fill them full of rage, drink a little grog, and picnic on a raid? The Shanty Man can. So you've basically poisoned my nightmares tonight with the Shanty Man concept. Because you know how I feel about pirates. I might as well just say that. Mariners are pirates.
At least it wasn't Shire Plum.
That's true. Thank goodness. You know, that I always avoid that final step into complete oblivion. And that final step is colored Shire Plum. No, but all in all, had a very pleasant gaming week. Cinders, what'd you get up to?
So I have been home more than normal during the work week due to sickness, and so I spent my time deeding and collecting ore. So my weaponsmith did finally get up to Umbar crafting level to make Emerlina her new Umbari level shield spikes, but I also took advantage of the crafting weekend and the crafting sales in the store to help with that. And then I did some scrading with Ploy last night, and we did discover that Heligrad does not give seals.
Yes.
And after entering and exiting instances repeatedly and then laughing because it would pop the little window up and everybody would travel again, even though it was still the wrong one, it was a pretty good time. And then I started playing a game called Pioneers of Pagonia today. Just for something a little bit different, a little bit less stressful, if you will. Just to try it out. And I spent about 2.5 hours on the introduction world, and then I had met all the objectives and got my little fireworks saying I had won. So then I tried the next world that they have set up, where it introduces the AI and training with them, and still it's basically based on just completing objectives to win, and that took up another probably 3 hours, and I still haven't finished it, so I'm looking forward to continuing that. Pineleaf, how was your week?
All right, we'll begin with my low-level minstrel, lore master, my low-level lore master, where I rescued a dwarf and thoroughly searched some ruins where that dwarf was being kept. So yeah, that's that place in Eregion where you have to find 23 locations in order to going all over the place. And that was the first time that I've ever done that deed without looking up the locations in the internet. So,
Rats?
Yeah, that was, oh boy, that one was quite a mouthful getting all through that location, going through that entire location. And of course, a couple of times I missed a spot in going down a particular set of stairs or anything like this. So I had to find, okay, which set of stairs did I miss? Which ones I did? But eventually I did find the very last location, and I'm done with that. And assuming I remember to reset my title, maybe I should use that as my title for that character, because that was a lot of work. Now, on the field trip, our mariner crew battled giants and dour hands in the Misties, and we witnessed the unleashing of a certain dragon wight that I then, in another character, helped deploy to kill a couple hours later when we were doing Heligrad. So it's actually thematically tied together on that for those two events in there. And I prepared for the Year of the Dragon by playing a new game called Wormspan.
Is that where you're a dragon and you're building a bridge?
No, you're trying to build a dragon sanctuary.
Oh, okay.
And so you're trying to attract ones to come. Now, the reason why it's called Wormspan is because it's a spin-off of a game called Wingspan, where you're trying to build a bird sanctuary.
Ah, okay.
Yes.
And I'm assuming you've played the other one.
Yeah, well. I have played Wingspan, yes.
Okay.
Okay. So, we do not have any emails this week, but if you like Since When, you can send it to podcast@LOTROplayers.com. The Players Alliance has 2 shows. On Saturdays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, we have LOTRO Players News, and we record TDO Players News when DRAC is available. You can join us for our shows at LOTROplayers.com/live. And that's all for tonight. This is 5 Needles reminding you to skirmish responsibly.